Now, the big story today is that our brave military veterans are feeling insulted by President Trump. Here is what Trump said.
We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
No, it's just wrong, that, right? It is just wrong. 457 British troops died, 2,188 British military and civilian personnel were wounded. So I can see why people are angry. Here's what Tory leader Kemi Badenoch had to say about it.
What he was saying was absolute nonsense. I've met parents of young men who died in Afghanistan. It's not just about World War I or World War II. Every November, we pay our respects to them. They've left children behind who don't have fathers and mothers. I think those comments are absolutely appalling. They are untrue, and he should absolutely not have said that.
Well, here's what Nigel Farage has said.
But there was one thing that he did say that I have to take issue with. He said, NATO have never given us anything back. And I will object to that politely by saying this. When the decision was made to go into Afghanistan, we went in with America and a coalition of the willing. We stayed by America for the whole 20 years. We proportionately spent the same money as America. We lost the same number of lives as America, pro rata. And the same applies actually to Denmark and other countries too. So it's not quite fair.
Well, Prince Harry, who gets a fair bit of stick from me, but one thing I won't criticise him for is, of course, his actual military service. He did deploy twice in Afghanistan, and he's done the Invictus Games as well, to be fair, hasn't he? He's commented, he said, I served there and lost friends there, and those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect. Well, here's what our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said.
Consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and, frankly, appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country.
Look, it was one of those incredibly rare moments where I actually happen to agree with Sir Keir Starmer today on that personally. But I don't know about you, but I do think it's a little bit rich, though, for Sir Keir Starmer to pretend like he cares about the British military. This week, Starmer pushed through a law that could leave veterans in their 70s and 80s facing prosecution. As a human rights lawyer, represented a group of convicted IRA members and Al-Qaeda's Abu Qatada, amongst others. Yesterday, illegal migrants were moved into a former military barracks. Going to talk more about that later. Another barracks in Scotland, serving military personnel, are going to be deployed abroad, and in their place, Starmer's government is apparently going to move a load of illegals in, so they'll be living near military men's wives and kids. What Trump said was silly, it was offensive, it was wrong, wasn't it? But how dare Starmer pretend he cares about our military when thousands of veterans are lining the streets and his new law could allow a load of them to be dragged through court and ruin what little remains of their lives. This important interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect your money and your identity. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code here to get ExpressVPN right now and save up to 73% on annual plans today. Right, let's get back into it. Before we go to my live audience on this, let's get the views of our panel. Christys, I'll start with you. Go on.
Look, this is Trump doing what Trump does. And the thing that it's wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is absolutely, completely and utterly wrong. However, the thing that people like about Trump, the thing that attracts people to Trump is that this diatribe and doesn't always think about what he says, and he says it like it is. And sometimes he's not always right. Sometimes he gets it wrong. Sometimes he gets ultimately what he wants, or a little bit of what he wants. Look at what's happened with Greenland. You know, we're going to invade, we're going to do all of this. Well, actually, that wasn't really what he meant. But by coming out with that amount of nonsense, he actually managed to sort of, get a little bit of what he wanted. So I don't think we can be that surprised, but he is completely wrong. And I think it's important that he's being called out as being wrong, and I'm not sure whether he will clarify or apologise, but he probably should. But I think there are two wider issues here very quickly. Firstly, I think it demonstrates that being America's poodle doesn't always get the appreciation of America. And when you consider the amount of times that we have followed America doing things, well, actually, we don't always get that appreciation. And maybe that's something we should reflect on about standing on our own 2 feet. But secondly, it is absolutely repellent opportunism from Starmer, whom I agree with in condemning Trump, but bearing in mind, you're absolutely right, Patrick, in the last 48 hours, they've been trying to remove the provision which gives a form of immunity to British soldiers. This is absolute opportunism. Now I know it'll be popular, I'll protect British soldiers.
Go on, Jamie.
Well, I think, first of all, I think the Prime Minister is right to call out those comments, and they are just factually incorrect. And you only need to remember the scenes of Wootton Bassett when we used to see coffins with the Union flag parading through that place, and it upsets me beyond belief. And anyone that's been to Remembrance Day parade will know that feeling. But I tell you what, it's a bit rich for a Prime Minister who the greatest disrespect to the memory of anyone that's fallen for this country, for democracy, for strong borders, is watching our country being invaded by illegal migrants on a daily basis. That is not what those men laid their lives for. Cancelling elections, which is something that men and women have fought and died for, the idea of democracy, is very rich for the Prime Minister to seek this opportunity to have a pop at Trump, to appeal to some of his lefty people in the party. Unfortunately for the Prime Minister, actually, I think he did go a bit too far with one of our closest allies, and I think a lot of what he said to camera, he should be saying over the phone, not to camera. The Prime Minister just needed to call out the President on his facts. I don't think we should be picking a war with our closest ally.
OK, all right. But just as a show of hands from the audience, who thinks that Trump should apologise for what he said? Yeah, it's most of you, I think, isn't it? So there we go. And there's a lady on the front row here who would like to make a point, I think. What have we got to say about what's going on here?
Just that I completely agree. I think he should apologise. I think it was really wrong. We lost as many people, sadly, as they did. We were there with them on the front line. I don't know how he could actually dispute that. So, yeah, I think he should apologise, and all the families and the loved ones that are left behind. It's terrible. I think it's really bad. I do agree with a lot of things he does say, but definitely not that. Yeah,
I think that's how a lot of people feel. Go on, Barry, and then we'll go to Anna.
OK. The US was the first country in history ever to invoke Article 5 of NATO, which is to call for your allies to come to your assistance because you have been attacked. We did. They're the only country that's ever asked for it. And this particular president, who's just been so rude about 457 of our service personnel who died and their families and their memory, you know, he received multiple drafts for the Vietnam War, but they were always deferred. He had a medical deferment because he claimed that he had heel spurs which stopped him from serving, a fact which his lawyer then later said Trump had revealed to him was complete nonsense. So this man who refused to serve his own country has had the brass neck to say those things about our military and our troops, which are the finest in the world, when we came to America's aid under NATO Article 5. I think it's disgusting, and of course he should apologise.
Yep. OK. And Anna, your views on this?
Yeah, I totally... I totally and utterly agree. Sometimes I think President Trump gets things done. And, you know, he has this art of the deal way of doing things, and he's effective. But this week, for me, he has crossed a line. I think his behaviour has been rude, disrespectful, dangerous, and I'd go as far as to say he's been a man-baby. Because he has acted emotionally, and he has acted without checking his facts. And that's something, frankly, which children do. And that is not something which we want or need in the leader of the Western world. He started off the week being incredibly rude and childish to the Norwegian Prime Minister and saying that that's why he'd lost the Nobel Prize, which has nothing to do with Greenland. He's then disrespected all of our troops and everyone who was injured as well. And why is it dangerous? I think it's dangerous because someone who either forgets or doesn't know their history is likely to repeat it. And I do not think in the leader of the Western world we want somebody who is not checking their facts, or if they have checked their facts, they can't remember their facts. And it was embarrassing last night on Question Time to see Greg Swinson, who is the leader of the Republicans in either in this country or Europe, having to actually say that the President of the United States, he was a Republican, is wrong. And he hasn't checked his facts. How embarrassing is that? So I'm sorry, he's really got to do better, and he absolutely should apologise.
All right, so we've done the kind of Trump angle to it now, and it seems like people here are relatively unanimous. Let's have a little look at the thing that Starmer said, OK? And I think the timing of what he said there, Christys, you alluded to it. Is it opportunism? Because, you know, I would argue no man has really done more to damage veterans in a way. I mean, this thing that we've got earlier this week, you know, people in their 70s and 80s could get a knock on the door and prosecuted. Members of the IRA are walking around with letters of comfort.
Yeah, it's I don't know how. We talk a lot on this programme about what if conflict occurred? What if we were called to draft? What if younger people had to go to war? And you have to do that in the confidence that the state is behind you and will be behind you 100%. And the idea that any of these protections should be rolled back is outrageous and actually disgusting, because that's what we are. We ask them, and some of these people have paid the ultimate price. So I hate the opportunism and the hypocrisy that we get, but also I hate as well when you look at some of the other bits that, like, you know, when the tariffs were coming, and I think I heard you make this point, and, you know, I actually agreed with you. Well done.
Wow. Look at that. Hey?
But it was a really good point, saying, you know, these tariffs are awful, but you know that this is going to be a perfect opportunity for Starmer and the like to go, well, look, reason that Britain isn't doing well, it's the tariffs over there. So sometimes they get these opportunities and it's repellent.
Barry, did you vote for these historic prosecutions of veterans the other day?
Yeah, I wasn't there in Parliament because I was on jury service, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Guilty or not?
Tell us all about that.
Yeah. As you know, I'm not allowed to discuss the case.
Fair enough.
Is it finished, or are you still on it?
The case is finished, yeah.
OK.
I'm
intrigued now, but anyway, go on. Carry on.
How would you have voted?
With the whole issue here, there is no amnesty for murder, and yet that is actually what we had to do to get the Good Friday Belfast Agreement through. And it was a compromise that was worked at the time between all the parties in order to get peace in Northern Ireland. But actually now all the parties, and I mean all the parties in Northern Ireland, actually are in agreement that this was wrong and that there should be no amnesty for murder. And that means that, and it doesn't just apply to British personnel who served there, it applies to the other side as well.
All the IRA letters of comfort are now shredded?
Yes, all of those letters of comfort are, well, if the legislation finally gets through, then that will change. And I think all of us would understand that there should be no amnesty for murder. But of course, I would say this, we're now at such a distance from those events. We're talking 40 years ago in most cases and more, that it would be difficult, I think, for any prosecution to be brought. But if one can be, and if it is clear that somebody abused their position in the army or committed a murder
we have
the
a precedent
IRA.
for this. We have a precedent for this, and that precedent is Dennis Hutchins. He was tried 3 times for murder, found not guilty 3 times, and died alone in a hospital bed during COVID in Northern Ireland because he was dragged there for the 3rd time. And he was, I think I'm right in saying he was in his 80s or late 70s, right? So there is a precedent for this and how it can ruin people's lives. My concern is that you're going to end up getting people repeatedly tried and it will ruin their lives. But
that is, if they're guilty, they've already ruined somebody else's family and their life.
So it's a money spinner for lefty lawyers that hate the country. That's what it is. Might as well say what it is. It's a money spinner for lefty lawyers who hate the country, who are actually, I think, disrespecting the honourable thing, which is that people risk their lives to fight for the country.
OK.